Well, here we are playing Axis Empires, both versions, or both games of it. And I did the Western, or the Western Allies turn. It was really almost nothing at all. Just, I haven't looked and picked their next card. That's what I didn't do. But they played their cards, negotiations with Belgium, and that gave the French an extra replacement step. But they ended up getting conflicting plans, no result. And likewise, they did some diplomacy over here in the Far East, the Xi'an Agreement, which came up with Chinese inertia, no result. Bad, not particularly useful cards, as it turns out to have played. And I've got to kind of watch those tables. How likely are they to just fail on me? That's an issue. Now I got to pick cards for the next turn. I've already looked through everything and said I'm not doing anything else, except that I packed together those French units in Metz. But other than that, there's not really much to do here. You know what I did forget to do, though? I forgot. Oh, no, that's in the end of the turn phase. Okay. I thought I had to roll the delay segment at the end of the player turn. Alright, so I'll go on to the Soviets and probably end up catching more than one turn proper, which are, what, 2 months each, within this video, just because this is very much like a Days of Decision type game at this stage. You're doing so little, maybe moving a piece around or two, but for the most part you're just looking at these cards and trying to decide, what am I going to do? How is this going to affect me later in the game? Where's my set of options and what am I doing? And that's where we really are. However, the play integrates better into when we hit the military stage with the option cards than Days of Decision feels like it does with Whiff. I've only done that a couple of times, but, well, only once where I let into Whiff, and a couple of times with just Days of Decision alone. This feels more natural so far. It also feels easier to make the choices. Days of Decision with those big menu cards, I don't know if the later versions got a better means of delivering the information, but I find these cards much, much more useful as a way of capturing the information that I need to look through and figure out, what do I need to play? Okay, this card prevents this one, let me look at that one, let me look at that one. And I find it easier than a CDG because I got all the cards in front of me. I mean, I got my whole deck here. I can look and say, okay, what does it mean to pick this? In a CDG, quite often, you got something that has some reference to some other card you need to play. I'm thinking in particular here, Paths of Glory. You need to play this card to play this card. Well, I don't have that card in my hand, so I can't tell you, do I want this all that much? All I know is I won't be able to do something later if I don't do it now. But I don't know quite what the effect of that something is. And I find that very disturbing. In this, I find I have all the information I really need. It doesn't tell me for sure what's going to happen. So many of these cards have random charts on them that honestly I can kind of say, you know, who cares? I know what it's meant to do, and I can kind of guess that it'll do what it's meant to do, more or less. Not whether or not it's some huge bonus or something. Anyway, I'll come back and do the Soviet turn. And for the Soviets, again, went with a pretty standard pick here. Mongol Purges. This was the historical Spring 37 pick. Gives an option here, the apply European commitment, to move something over to the European side in terms of a support unit. I don't have any that I can move. I don't think the beachheads are allowed. They're just markers. Disputes were already in effect. Influence applied to Mongolia. Well, get a little marker here. That'll allow Mongolia to become an allied country to the Soviets at some point, perhaps. As of right now, it's not really a huge effect, but and we got some replacement points, a couple of infantry steps. Spread them out here. I probably should move these guys. They said in Russia, and this doesn't seem like Russia. So I should probably move some of these down and they can move like that. Well, actually they can't. There's no speedy movement in this game unless you break units down and reform them. So I'll move these guys forward. I just want to get them into closer proximity of those Japanese forces. I don't think they're doing me any good back here. Alright, what else do we have? Over on the European front, we picked up the Tukhachevsky reforms. Now this is a weird card, because you'd think, reforming the Russian military should be lots of good. Well, there doesn't appear to be a lot of good in it, and a lot of the cards it takes out of play, it's kind of painful to see them going. Things like the Great Patriotic War and Red Army reforms. I'm scared removing those. I feel like the Russian army is getting weaker. But this is in place of the purges, and it's going to strengthen the Russian army in the short term. I'm actually taking that into play and into effect on my next card, which is, okay, well, if we're enforced on the short term, we don't have to worry about a Nazi-Soviet pact anymore. We can try to build up our own alliance structure and defend ourselves and prepare ourselves for taking the Germans on head-on, possibly with the aid of the French. That's just kind of where I'm thinking, is that kind of drove me in that direction. Alright, this is actually the end of the turn, and we go down and hit the end of turn phase, taking care of the conditional events, which didn't actually take effect here. So Russia's posture is not war. Russia's still at peace. So here's the thing. We've got some stuff here in the delay box. I've got to cope with this. So in particular, somewhere or another, there's a delay box modifier. Number of victory points in the box containing a rising sun. There isn't one. War production, reduced U.S. impact. None of this appears to be here in play yet. So I'm not going to have any specific delay modifiers of any kind. So essentially the die roll I make is the number of turns in advance that this is going to come. So let's take a look at the Navy card. That's going to be available next turn, really. The logistics, well, that's going to take a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the scratch convoy. 1, 2, 3. And we'll get to see what the effect of that Navy thing is very shortly, I guess. Alright, we're on to the next turn. Okay, so here we are playing through the April-May turn. Not a lot's happened. I've done the Axis and the Western powers, and nothing really happened. All that happens is you worry about these conditional events. The economic program's already in place. The Siena Agreement, again, came up with no effect on the roll. Same thing with the Civil War, no effect, and the negotiations with Belgium. You keep rolling, good things could happen on them. I was going to just buzz through the Russians the same way, but then I realized, let's start moving these guys. So I'll do a breakdown of their unit, and that ends up being only 2 steps, not 3, making it a somewhat easier to handle piece. And this one also, I'll break down into 2 steps. The reason here is, now we'll see, during the regular operational movement, I can move just a little bit faster. Gives me a little bit more speed to redeploy because I put things in kind of the wrong places. I can do that elsewhere. You can see some of these other things. I've got these armored cav in place now. Because of the Tukhachevsky reforms, I was able to get additional armor up early. And that's really the advantage here is I've got a slightly stronger army at the beginning of the game. So by having that, I have these kind of armored cav units in place. I'm hoping to be able to maybe take the offensive or at least halt Germany further forward than normally would happen by working with the Western Allies here. Anyway, here I've moved forward. Something's not right. I didn't want to break this down into these units. I wanted to break it down. Oh boy. I don't know what I did. These are Western units that somehow I grabbed accidentally. Yeah, that was kind of illegal actually. Alright, let's redo that. So I was here like this and had moved like this. Now let's look at the breakdowns. I only have these breakdown units. So I can break it down like this. Now this doesn't terribly help me, but it will speed things up a little bit. And like this. So using my detachments, and then I do my regular operational movement. And now if I'm correct, the follow-up movement cannot be using the reserve movement phase cannot use the rail movement. I'll check that in a moment, but I believe that's the case. Alright, anyway, the Russians didn't have anything exciting on their cards. The Mongol purges, the only conditional event there is during wartime they get an advantage. So, essentially, we're moving into the next turn. Oh, what I forgot to mention, the army is now in control of the Japanese government. For what that's worth. That's what I wanted. And I don't feel bad about pulling the political option away. Alright, so this is going to move forward. That's odd. The pacing's kind of different. In the summer, there's a longer period between the cards. I like that. But I didn't expect it, actually. Alright, and onward. So the movement restriction rule I was thinking of only applies if you're moving on road or rail in an enemy country. You can't use that during the reserve movement phase. So you can use the bonus movement for the smaller pieces here in the reserve movement phase as long as you're repositioning within your own country, which makes things a little faster. I've moved them forward already. And on we go. I'm going to upload this because it's about the right length, and we're moving into the summer.